Hello everyone, Andrew here, and welcome to my first console review in like forever. I did some pickup videos not too long ago. I did the Super Nintendo controller opening video, but it's been a long time since I've kind of just sat here and talked about one console and all of the different kind of crazy accessories and things that exist for it. I used to do it a lot, like I did an NES one, Super NES, 64, GameCube, Sega one, old Atari consoles. So I figured it was finally about time that we did one again. And of course, the holiday season is upon us, and two of the main colors that you see during the holiday are red and green. And there's not really a green console unless you include the fantastic N64, but then the main color of the N64 is gray, so that doesn't count. So I figured that today we would talk about a red console, and one that I'm sure for a lot of people does not need any introduction because it's you know, parodied and just so much kind of geek culture out there is that terrible, horrible thing that shouldn't exist, and Nintendo should be forever ashamed that they created it. And I'm of course talking about the Virtual Boy, you know, the crazy thing. It's supposed to, you know, represent virtual reality, and you put it over your face, and then it's like, you're, bam, you're in this crazy red and black world, and you have a headache all over the place. No, the Virtual Boy is a very, very, very interesting thing. This is, of course, just the headpiece right here. There is also a stand, and when you put them both together, you get the Virtual Boy with the stand. And I'm of course going to talk about a whole bunch of different things. I have it complete in the box. I have the carrying case that you used to be able to get. Say you rented it from like a store, you would be able to bring it home in that. I'm going to take a look at the games themselves, because I actually do have a complete loose Virtual Boy game collection, North America game collection, which is in some ways not super impressive because it's only 14 North American released games. But at the same time, they're definitely not too easy to get your hands on, so you can look at it from kind of both angles there. We're going to look at some of the accessories that existed for it, not many, but some, and then just overall, yeah, just some other crazy things we're going to have a look at as well. Compare it to the, you know, different things. I compare the cartridge sizes to some other some other Nintendo systems. Hopefully we have fun in that regard. But first, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the Virtual Boy itself, as well as how I actually kind of started. It's kind of what got me into video game collecting overall. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, because I kind of just want to stick to the actual review of the console, but I'll try to make this quick. What happened was, in the summer of 2006, I was on a gigantic kind of, you know, Wario Land rampage. I was beating all of them. I beat the first game with all the treasures, all the exits. I beat the second game, all the treasures, all the map pieces. I beat the secret final level that unlocks once you get everything. Third game, all keys, all treasure, even all of the music note coins in every level. Fourth game, I beat a very hard mode with all gold crowns, all treasures, all CDs. So I was like, man, I need more Wario Land. I really, 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 I love Wario Land. I want more Wario Land, and there was no Wario Land Shake-It at that time. And the only other way for me to get more Wario Land was on the Virtual Boy, with Virtual Boy Wario Land. Because back when this came out, in 1995, I tried it at Toys R Us. Now, what was it? Okay, Andrew, don't let this fail you now. I'm pretty sure it was 95. Darn. I know, I even looked it up to make sure, but now I'm forgetting. I'm pretty sure it was August 1995 in North America, and July 1995 in Japan that it came out. And it was discontinued, I think it was December 1995 in Japan, and March, sorry, yeah, go back, yeah, December 1995 in Japan, and March 1996 in North America. So it wasn't out for very long at all. But I tried it in the store when I was really young, and because they had it set up at Toys R Us, and I played Wario Land on it. I'm like, wow, this is a really cool game. I was like 3 years old, which you're not even supposed to play Virtual Boy until you're like 7. But they didn't have gigantic warnings because, you know, it was the 90s and no one cared about anything. But basically, I'm like, if I want more Wario Land, I'm going to have to get the Virtual Boy. And I was just, you know, I loved Wario Land. I was like on a conquest to complete every Wario Land game 100%. So it's exactly what I did. But I couldn't just find a local place that was selling the Virtual Boy. That is, you know, first of all, my area was very, you know, not very retro store, you know, not very retro store plentiful? No, that makes no sense. There weren't very many retro game stores in my area. So I had to go online to get it. And anyone who used to, you know, who was kind of young and had parents who weren't really, you know, too able with computers, too too knowledgeable about computers would know that, you know, parents hate when you wanted to buy things online because everyone was out to steal your credit card. But basically what happened was I went on there and we actually sent a check to the person. This is how long ago it was, in 2006. And I got a Virtual Boy with 6 games, complete with the stand, the battery pack, the controller, for $60 back in 2006. And then basically after that, eBay still had a lot of really, really cool and cheap games on it because the Virtual Boy hadn't skyrocketed in price at that point. So basically, the summer of 2006 was the summer where I bought all 14 North American released Virtual Boy games online. And that's basically my very, very, very first kind of experience with video game collecting. And then after that, I'm like, you know, video games are so cool. There's just so many neat games and accessories. And then that's what started all of this. So that's Andrew's Christmas story to you. Tell it to, you know, people on Christmas Eve before they go to bed, and set some pizza off to the side for me to come get as I come down the chimney. But basically, I know, I hope people enjoyed that story, because now you kind of have a background of why any of this exists. The Virtual Boy is a really, 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 really cool thing. It has a lot of problems, but it has Wario Land, and that's the #1 thing that matters. Okay. So basically what you've got here is this thing that sits on the stand, and you have to look into it. You have the 2 eyepieces here. What image is displayed is basically, it's 2 images, 1 through each eyepiece. So what happens is, unfortunately, sometimes one of the eyes on the Virtual Boy will stop working. So when you look through it, either one of them starts glitching out, or one of them just doesn't show anything at all, which really stinks because, you know, obviously, A, it doesn't look 3D, and B, it's an absolute pain, especially if one of them's glitching out, because then you have one eye where everything's kind of messing up, and the other one where it looks kind of normal. And what happens is, basically there's a whole bunch of problems with this thing. I mean, #1, the reason why it's just red and black is because red was the red LEDs were the cheapest to go with. It was made, you know, pretty much made. I mean, a whole bunch of different people made it, but the project was kind of, you know, headed by the same guy who made the Game & Watch and the Game Boy. So they were like completely behind him. Like, okay, this guy clearly knows what he's doing. So let's just kind of go ahead and make this, although he still says that it was kind of rushed. Because the whole reason the Virtual Boy kind of exists was kind of to fill in the gap between the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo 64, because you had things like the PlayStation coming out, other 32-bit consoles coming out during that time. So Nintendo kind of just didn't want the market, their market, you know, to have nothing. So they kind of threw the Virtual Boy out there in between, you know, before the 64 came out, and unfortunately it kind of bombed horribly. But basically what happens is, there's a board inside, and some of the connections on it over the years just start to become loose, and you kind of actually have to reopen it and kind of solder them back down if you want them to still, if you want to kind of fix it, but that's a pain. I've opened up a Virtual Boy before, and it is nothing like opening up a Super Nintendo controller. This thing is complex, at least on my standards. There's some people who probably, you know, could open this thing up in their sleep. But basically, that's what it was. You're supposed to look in there, and since you're kind of getting this different image through both eyes, it could be used to make things appear 3D, so that the games actually had some depth. Of course, it's not virtual reality, and it's really a pain because you have to. I mean, it was kind of called a portable system too. But when you have it kind of on your desk with a stand, it's not exactly so portable. I've seen some really kind of cool projects on the internet where people have kind of like made a strap so that you could put it up to your head and then strap it around your head. I think even the Angry Video Game Nerd did that in his review. He just kind of like tapes it around his head. That's pretty much the only way to make this thing portable. But you may notice, you know, there's no controls or anything on it, and that's because there is actually a really bizarre controller that comes with it, and it plugs into the bottom. Let me show you a couple of the things on the bottom here. Right there, you have your controller port, and then you have your extension port, because originally there was planned to be a link cable for the Virtual Boy, but it died so quickly that kind of never happened. Then you have your headphone jack, and volume, and cartridge slot on the bottom there. And that's kind of what's up with that. On the top, you have a thing you can kind of switch here to change the focus, and basically overall just make it so that, you know, your eyes, you know, don't bleed. People complain a lot about getting headaches when they play the Virtual Boy. I think a lot of people, you know, having to who kind of just spout the whole headache thing on the internet. Like if you read like YouTube comments or stuff like that of Virtual Boy related videos, they'll talk about, oh, you'll get a headache if you play it. But I bet a lot of them probably haven't actually played it. I bet a lot of people probably do get headaches from playing the Virtual Boy, but that's never been my main problem. I've played through, you know, Virtual Boy Wario Land 100% in one sitting, which, I mean, mind you, and unfortunately is the shortest Wario Land game of them all, so in just a couple of hours you can do that. But my main problem with the Virtual Boy has always been this part. Because, I mean, you hook the stand in, but you may notice, I mean, you may not be able to from there, it's not adjustable. So basically, where the Virtual Boy sits on here is where it's going to sit. You can't kind of raise it higher or lower. Which means that in order for you to be comfortable while you're playing it, you have to find the perfectly kind of leveled table. Or else it's either going to be too high or too low. So what I normally have to do is get like a phone book out. So that kind of props it up a bit, but still it's usually either too high or too low. So by the time I'm done playing my game, I'm hunched over the table with my eyes in it, and it's usually never at the perfectly comfortable height because you can't adjust the stand. My back and neck are in a lot more pain than my eyes are, but that's probably just my experience. I'm sure that everyone's experience with the Virtual Boy is different, and it's something you definitely can't understand until you've actually tried one, which, I mean, I definitely encourage you, if you know anyone who has one, ask them if you can try it out, because it's definitely an interesting thing to try. A lot of the games aren't great, but some of them, like Virtual Boy Wario Land, despite its incredibly short length, are extremely fun. And Virtual Boy Wario Land's probably my, like, you know, obviously with my Wario Land obsession, is my #1 recommendation on the Virtual Boy. If you have one and are wondering what games you should get for it, and you even have that phone number on the bottom there, I wonder what would happen if you called them today and told them that your Virtual Boy needed to be repaired. So is there anything else I want to say about the console directly, other than that? I mean, we talked about the controller that plugs into there, so I guess we might as well talk a little bit about the controller itself. Which is very strange. The #1 thing you'll probably notice is that it has 2 directional pads, which are very strange. In some games, they both operate exactly the same, so you can use either one. Although in some games they actually do different things, like in Roboxer, which is kind of a, well, I'll show you the actual cartridge in a second, which is actually, what's it called? A boxing game. I almost said wrestling, sorry. A boxing game, each of the D-pads would be used for each of the fists, which is kind of interesting. Also, the on and off switch for the actual Virtual Boy is on the controller, which is something that's really strange. It's not on the console itself, so don't accidentally, you know, be playing the game and then your thumb hits the on and off, you know, the off switch, and you completely lose absolutely everything. Also, there are L and R buttons on the back, and you got A and B and start and select there. On the back here, what we have is this is detachable. This is actually, just let me get this off here. This is the AC adapter. And what happens is you flip this up, just like that, and you'll see that right there you can actually plug in a Super Nintendo AC cord, and that will allow you to play your Virtual Boy without batteries, because when you bought it new, what you actually got with it was this thing. You didn't get the AC adapter, you instead got the battery pack, which took 6 AA batteries that would be gone in just over a couple of hours. So basically, as soon as the AC adapter came out, I'm sure 1 million people, I mean, actually not, they didn't even sell 1 million Virtual Boys. I'm sure everybody who owned the Virtual Boy ran to the store and grabbed it, because this thing just destroys your AA's. Much like other things, you know, the Atari Lynx and the Sega Game Gear, but the Virtual Boy will just murder your AA's. So you definitely needed to buy the AC adapter, yeah, the AC adapter separately, and then, thankfully, I mean, I guess they must have been thinking ahead about it, because they made the battery pack removal, so you can just slide that on there. Why can I not slide this on here? Let's not break it, because we're on video. Seems to be a common trend. There you go. You slide it onto the back of the controller, and then that's how that works. So yeah, basically that's the gist of the console itself. It ran on batteries, but you could get the AC adapter for it. The way the 2 screens work, and then unfortunately some of them don't work so you know, they had I cannot speak today. This is what happens around Christmas time, I suppose. No, so unfortunately sometimes the eyes don't work too well, and then you have your stand. which doesn't adjust. So overall, the Virtual Boy just did not have a lot of things going for it. Everything from the controller itself, the battery pack, the stand not adjusting, and the actual console just had problems. So it's no wonder why things kind of did not go so well as far as the Virtual Boy goes. But let's have a little bit of a look at the box. And this box is fragile. Inside is not a nice kind of styrofoam tray like you'll find with some of your consoles. It's more, think like when you go to McDonald's or a restaurant and you get that thing that holds your cups, that kind of cheap, brown papery thing. That's the kind of tray that the Virtual Boy sits in. But now consider that this came out, like a billion years ago, and it's old, and it's like it's been exposed to the elements. Well, not really, it's been in the box, but the point is, it's old, and it's kind of starting to, not be as sturdy as it once was. So I'm going to be very gentle with this box. But this is what you could expect when you bought the Virtual Boy. And on the back, kind of shows all the things that come in there. It shows some of the games. It's funny, the top right there says Wario Cruise, which was renamed to Virtual Boy Wario Land. And yes, that is the box. That's a price sticker on the right there, which is not going to show up on camera. But it does say that someone paid $29.99 for this, because of course it didn't sell well, so I'm guessing that they just kind of unloaded them all off at one point. And it's funny because there's a sticker here on the side where you can fill in your purchase date as it's a kind of a warranty kind of thing, and they filled in April 4th, 1997. So that was after the Virtual Boy was discontinued. So it's interesting to kind of see, I guess, they must have just floated around in the store. Actually, that's over a year, if I'm correct. I'm sure 95 it came out, 96 it was discontinued, so that's April 97 is over a year after it was discontinued. I guess they were still floating around the stores, and someone finally picked one up for $29.99, which is absolutely crazy. And then the other accessory that kind of exists for the Virtual Boy is the cool Virtual Boy carrying cases. I guess you could probably rent them from like Blockbuster, who remembers them, back in the day. And you would get this really cool kind of carrying case that you could take it home and it wouldn't just combust in your hands as the Virtual Boy tended to do. And this is all complete in here. I want to be very careful with it. So I actually might not show it too well. But it has everything in there. It has a book in there. It has the foam still. And I love video game carrying cases that places like Blockbuster used to have, because of course, A, places like that aren't even around anymore, but B, it just is neat to kind of have something to, carry your consoles around in if you ever do want to take them somewhere. Now, no one's ever asked me to bring the Virtual Boy over to their house for like a party or anything like that. Understandably, I guess they don't want everybody going home with the fabled headache, but it is still a really cool case to have. And I love having that in my collection. I've always wanted to have that on video, and I think it was like one of my very first videos I showed that. I'm like, we're gonna have to talk about this some more in a future video. So now, like 3 years later, we finally did that. So that's what the box and carrying case look like. Also complete in the box, this is the AC adapter that you could buy separately. And it's funny, because up in the top right there, you have a sticker. I mean, it sucks having stickers on boxes, but it's like a vintage sticker. $9.99 from Electronic Boutique, which is the equivalent of GameStop in Canada. So just kind of, it's funny to think about how, electronic stores were probably just trying to get the stuff out. They weren't making money on, sell the Virtual Boys for like nothing, sell the accessories, just trying to make some money back. And now these days, things would probably go for ridiculous amounts online. And thankfully, that's why back in 2006, I got the deals when I could. Alright, let's talk a little bit about the games. Virtual Boy games look somewhat like original Game Boy games. Here's your Virtual Boy game, Virtual Boy Wario Land. And here is your original Game Boy cartridge. So it's just a little bit kind of longer than it, although it's also a little bit thinner. Virtual Boy games also came with these little kind of black dust covers that you could slide onto the end, to keep the dust out. So instead of having, the big plastic cases like original Game Boy games sometimes came with, that was their solution for that. Also, we should take a look at the boxes. North American Virtual Boy games were the same size as the boxes for North American Game Boy games. They are also exactly the same size as Virtual Boy game boxes were in Japan. This is the Japanese one, and this is oh, they're not the same game, but this is what a Japanese box looks like, and this is what a North American box looks like. It's interesting, though, because if you think about other packaging for Nintendo games back in the day, it seemed like the Japanese version was always smaller. This is comparing a North American Game Boy box to a Japanese one. So I always thought it was kind of interesting that for some reason the Virtual Boy was the exception to that, and they kept both box designs exactly the same. So that's what the boxes look like. For some reason, all North American Virtual Boy games had the kind of red and blue thing going on. Because, you know, back in the 90s, when you thought 3D, I guess the first thing you thought of was 3D glasses and the red and blue lenses. So all of the boxes kind of have, despite the fact there may be an image on the front, they all have that kind of the top half is red and the bottom half is blue kind of thing going on. Meanwhile, Japanese Virtual Boy games didn't have that. They were all just completely original box designs. But now that we're done talking about the boxes, that brings us to the actual Virtual Boy games themselves. All 14 North American loose games are in this box, and people may remember a few videos ago, I talked about how perfectly Game Boy games fit into those small card-holding cardboard boxes. Now, it's really cool because a small one of these perfectly holds, if you take out two Japanese games that I just have in here, it perfectly holds all 14 loose cartridges without the dust cover in the box. So that's 1 to 14 lined up right across there, and it's just perfect. They just fit so nicely. So it's like it was made to hold Virtual Boy games, and then someone found the secondary use to use it for cards. But those are Japanese. We'll talk about those in a bit. Although I guess it's finally time for us to go over the library of games without dropping them on the floor. Let me get up to my camera here. Should I do this the way I zoom in? Why the heck not? Let's zoom in on the games. Let's not step on my Virtual Boy. Alright. So, game number 1 is Mario Tennis. Every single Virtual Boy console in North America came bundled with Mario Tennis, so there's no kind of separate boxed copy of it, unlike in Japan. I actually do own the box for that, so we will look at that afterwards. Number 2, we have Mario Clash. It's kind of like a 3D, well, not necessarily 3D, but the Virtual Boy version of the classic Mario Brothers arcade game, where you would kind of just have to destroy the enemies in that very basic room. All Virtual Boy games try to kind of use the 3D gimmick in some way. So like Mario Clash, there would be enemies in the foreground and background that you would have to destroy, and sometimes you could throw shells from one of the, foreground or background into the other kind of plane and hit enemies that way. Mario Tennis didn't really have any 2D, 3D gimmicks, just it was supposed to look like a tennis court that actually had some depth, rather than just being 2D. Wario Land, Virtual Boy Wario Land, a lot of the levels have gimmicks where you'll be able to see part of the level in the background, and you'll need to find panels that will allow you to jump into the background and get whatever items are located there. It's a really fun game, so if you ever do get a chance to play Virtual Boy Wario Land, I definitely recommend it, because it's one of my favorite games, despite how short it is and the fact that it's on the Virtual Boy. Vertical Force is a vertical scrolling arcade shoot 'em up, where you command a plane, not a plane, what am I saying, a spaceship through space. And the way the 2D, 3D works is that your ship will switch between the 2D, between the foreground and the background in order to hit certain, different enemies and to avoid obstacles. So that's how you want to do that. Red Alarm is a lot like Star Fox. There's apparently supposed to be a Star Fox for the Virtual Boy. I wonder if it turned into Red Alarm, or if Red Alarm came out first. I don't know, but it's a lot like Star Fox, where you command the ship, and then you just kind of fly around, and it's the third-person view, and you shoot stuff, and everybody has fun. Tele-Roboxer, as I mentioned, is a boxing game where you're a robot, and you fight other robots. Panic Bomber is a Bomberman game, but it's actually a puzzle game, so it's not your traditional Bomberman. Kind of like Wario Woods, but kind of not. How it's not really a Wario game, but it's Bomberman in some kind of puzzle game. Galactic Pinball is pinball in a galactic setting on the Virtual Boy with kind of like 3D look. Jack Bros is the rarest North American Virtual Boy game. It's the most expensive one that I bought back in the day. I paid $50 for it, which was kind of a stretch. I think like I was able to get most Virtual Boy games for $10 or less, but Jack Bros was the one that kind of stretched the budget the most. And it's kind of a cool overhead. You kind of explore And what kind of game do you explain that? It's an overhead adventure game is pretty much what it is. It's actually pretty fun. You have 3D Tetris, which is cool. It's not traditional Tetris. There was also V Tetris released for the Virtual Boy in Japan, which I will show. But 3D Tetris is you have a cube, and you have to align blocks in certain ways to create lines. But there's also a mode where you have to place the blocks in order to create certain kind of structures, which is really cool. Nestor's Funky Bowling was only released in North America, and it stars Nestor from Nintendo, and it is bowling. And there's not much else to say about it than that. You know, when you have a console that kind of sucks, what else should you do but put a game based on a movie that really sucks? Waterworld, the game, it's about as terrible as the movie and everything else. It's so ironic that there's a Waterworld game on the Virtual Boy. It's actually hilarious. Golf is a golf game. Like, it's not even virtual golf. It's just golf. Just don't expect any more than golf. And Virtual League Baseball is, of course, Virtual League Baseball on the Virtual League Baseball. So that is that. Can I get back into my seat without destroying everything here? And yes, I can. Those are all 14 games released in North America for the Virtual Boy. There were a total of 22 in all, some of which didn't come out in North America, and some of which didn't come out in Japan. Like I said, Nestor's Funky Bowling was a North American exclusive. 3D Tetris was a North American exclusive. It actually came out in North America after the Virtual Boy had already been discontinued in December of 1995 in Japan. One game that we didn't get, though, that I have both loose and in box, is V Tetris. And here's the cartridge for it right here. Unlike 3D Tetris, where, like I said, you place these blocks in kind of a cube setting, and that's how you kind of create the lines, but you also sometimes need to place these really strangely shaped blocks. And it'll be like, make a chair out of blocks, and you have to kind of place them. Just look it up. I can't explain what 3D Tetris is like, because there's not really many other games out there like it. It's not your traditional Tetris. V Tetris is exactly your traditional Tetris, where you just normal falling blocks of four squares, and you just make lines, and it's actually pretty cool. I mean, the 3D makes it look neat. The music is really good. And the game modes are okay, so if you're looking just for some, typical Tetris fun, V Tetris is the way to go. And you used to be able to buy this sealed. I'm an idiot. I mean, back then, those are my starting collecting days. I bought V Tetris, and it came to me sealed. But I'm like, back then, you don't think. So I'm not really an idiot. I mean, it's fun, I wanted to play it, so I opened up the sealed game, which it's even though it's like, 8 years later, I still don't think V Tetris would have been worth that much today sealed. I think you might still be able to find them floating out around there somewhere. But V Tetris is a game that was not too rare back in the day. Maybe it's rarer now. But that's cool. Well, what other games do we have here that I didn't show? I showed Galactic Pinball, the box for that. I showed Virtual League Baseball. And then other Japanese games. This is Red Alarm. This is Vertical Force. That, of course, the Japanese versions. And here is Mario Tennis. So this did not have a box. North America. Also, I have the protectors on them. As I have a few Game Boy protectors, so I figured my Virtual Boy collection was the most deserving of them. But this never had a separate box in North America. When you open up your Virtual Boy box, which it was included with, you just got the cartridge. There was no box in there. And of course, if you do open up a sealed game, you're not an idiot. I don't know why I said that. The point is to have fun. And, I have actually had quite a lot of fun with V Tetris. I guess the reason I say kind of idiot is because later on, I did end up finding a loose copy, so there was no point on me really opening the sealed copy. So, I think that's kind of the paradox of, sealed copies overall, is why open the sealed one when you can probably still find it loose anyway? But I had fun, and when you're collecting video games, fun is the #1 thing that matters, of course. Is there anything else I need to talk about? Because we've talked about the console, we've talked about the games, we've told my crazy story of the past, and how it's all this dumb black and red thing's fault that all of this craziness exists behind me, and beside me, and in front of me, and above me, and just... The Virtual Boy is a really cool console, and I'm so happy that it did get me started on my video game collecting journey. And I suppose I have Wario Land to thank for that. So, thank you very much, Wario Land. You are the absolute coolest platforming series, for sure. You can feel free to have, a crappy new sequel every year on Nintendo's latest console, and I will not complain. Okay. Well, but with that said, the Virtual Boy is a crazy thing. If you have memories about the Virtual Boy or anything that you want to ask about it, say about it, please post comments down below. If you've never played one, and there's something that I maybe didn't explain well enough, please go down and post about it. If there's something that you played it back in the day, and maybe it did give you a headache, or maybe post down in the comments. Tell me if you got a headache or if you didn't while you were playing a Virtual Boy. If all the headache kind of gossip is as warranted as it as it appears to be. But yes, with that said, I think I have rambled on long enough. So thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed me talking about the Virtual Boy, and I hope to see you next time for something different. So thanks, and see you later.